so you guys can see me. Mm-hmm. And then when I start the presentation, it'll cut off, and then when we get to questions, I'll switch it back on. So I appreciate you inviting me tonight, Bob, to talk to you guys a little bit about the Corps of Engineers. So I'll give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm a Southern Indiana resident. For those of y'all that logged on a little bit ago, Bob and I were talking. I moved. Y'all can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from Indiana. I was born and raised in Kentucky and lived in Louisville and just south of Louisville until 2001. And my wife and I moved over to the Georgetown area in Floyd County. And we're still in that area. So it's kind of one of the neat things, though. At first, my wife said, well, hey, maybe we should look at moving to Indiana. And I thought, well, I don't know that I want to do that. And we got over here, and now I'm thinking, man, this is really nice. I don't know why any people would want to live over in Kentucky now. So my folks don't like it when I say that. But anyway, I've worked for the Louisville District Corps of Engineers since 1995. I started when I was a co-op student working on my engineering degree at U of L. And so when I graduated with my master's in '98, the Corps of Engineers hired me on full time under what they called the Department of the Army Intern Program. And it basically meant that the Army paid my salary for 2 years, but I worked for the Corps of Engineers. So because of that, that meant for 2 years they could put me wherever they needed me within the Corps of Engineers. So looking back on it now, it was really a blessing because I got to rotate a lot of different places within the Louisville district. They started me out doing supervising construction work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. I worked in our engineering office, our project management office. I worked in operations where I got to visit all of our district lakes and crawl around in the towers to measure the bypass control valves and fun stuff like that. If any of y'all have ever been to Cannelton Lock and Dam, during that time they had Cannelton dewatered. So I got to be in the bottom of the lock chamber when it was dewatered and crawl around in the gates looking for cracks so that our welders could get in there and fix them. And so it was really neat. After that 2 years was up, or towards the end of it, they kind of put me in our Civil Works project management office. And so for about 5 years, I worked as a project manager on civil works type projects. So the standard things people associate with the Corps of Engineers with flood control projects and levee projects and things like that. And in 2004, they asked me to consider taking a different career path and moving into our office that handles design and construction of U.S. Army Reserve projects. So I kind of looked around and could see the writing on the wall that if I didn't volunteer to do this, I was going to be voluntold. So I thought it'd look better on my resume and make me look better in the organization if I went on and volunteered. So I moved down the hall and started managing design and construction of U.S. Army Reserve centers that we had, and we still have that mission that goes on. And it's a world, not really worldwide, but U.S.-wide mission. So within just a matter of a couple of weeks of taking that job, I had projects in Kansas and Texas and South Dakota and all over the place. And one week, my wife called me and asked where I was, and I said, well, right now I'm in Chicago. And she said, well, where were you? And I said, well, I was in South Dakota and I'm on my way to Baltimore. And she said, okay. And I'm like, is something wrong? She said, no, Mom just asked where you were, and you're all over the place so much. I didn't know where you were, and I felt bad for not knowing. So anyway, I kind of rotated around. And hang on just a second, guys. My computer's telling me I got a low battery. All right. I think I've got that remedied now, hopefully. So in 2007, they asked me to move over and go back in our Civil Works planning office and fill in on a temporary basis as the outreach coordinator. The person who preceded me in that role had taken another job within the organization, and they said, we need somebody to fill in on a temporary basis till we can figure out who we want to have the job. And I said, okay. And evidently they haven't found anybody else that they wanted to do the job. But in about 2 or 3 weeks after that, our commander asked if I would consider taking it full time. So I've been our outreach coordinator since then, and I get to go around and talk with different local governments, congressional staff, state government, other agencies, and see if they need help from the Corps of Engineers, just kind of how to get that help from us. So anyway, I'm going to start my presentation here and see if I can get this working. All right, can you guys see that slide? So normally when I give one of these presentations, I usually am talking more to a local government, and I'm kind of talking to them about the types of services that the Corps of Engineers can have, and if they're flooding, how they can reach out and work with us to get their flooding problems resolved. So this is going to be a little bit different of effort for me. So y'all can bear with me, and we'll see if this can work. But for those of y'all that do not know, the Army Corps of Engineers is a federal agency, and we are part of the Army, but most of us are civilians. So that's a little bit different than what people are used to. And let's see if I can get my slide. All right, my slides are not advancing. Can you guys see that? There we go. So I'll start off. This is can you guys hear me still?
Yes.
Okay, great. Since this is a genealogical society type presentation, I figured you guys are kind of like me, or enjoy history. So I reached out to our project manager, or our public affairs office, and kind of asked them, if they had some good information on history. So that I kind of change this up a little bit, because you guys are probably going to want to more hear about the stuff we can do and some of the stuff we have done, rather than how to cost share a project with the Corps of Engineers. So if you take a look here, the first picture you can see there is of the Portland Canal under construction, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the neat thing I think about working for the Corps of Engineers as a federal employee is it may be the only federal agency that has its roots before the United States existed. And people, when I say that, they're like, what? How can that be? Well, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has its roots traced back to 1775, when George Washington appointed Colonel Richard Gridley to be the first Army engineer. So we kind of grew out of the Army engineers. In 1779, the Congress officially created a Corps of Engineers in the Army, but it was disbanded after the Revolutionary War because they didn't see a need for it. Around the turn of the century in 1803, the Army then established the Corps of Engineers as a permanent branch, and gave the engineers the responsibility for starting West Point. So I thought that was pretty neat. And tying into the history of what we do, so and you all probably know this, but in 1817, the first commercial steamboat route from Louisville to New Orleans opened. And there's been a lot of debate on this, and I was trying to see if this is true or not. But supposedly around that time was when barrels from a barn fire were filled with whiskey, and steamboats took them from Louisville to New Orleans, which is where Kentucky bourbon was supposedly birthed. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a neat story. And it ties in with the Corps of Engineers because of the navigation mission that we have. And, you know, the other neat thing is, you know, when people think of bourbon, they typically think of the Derby. And so when you're looking at the Derby Festival, one of the responsibilities that our commander has every year, and it tied in with the Derby Festival, is to help pick the Great Steamboat Race winner. So I've tried to find out from the commander if it's true that that race is fixed and they pick the winner ahead of time. And I have yet to have a commander confirm or deny that. They just kind of grin. So maybe one day I'll get to find out. But the neat thing about that, in 1886 is when our district kind of got its founding. So you can see the first picture there, the Portland Canal that I referred to. That's from around 1875, 1880 time frame. It was originally a three-tiered canal where McAlpin Lock and Dam now stands. And so the original company that was trying to build that just had tons of issues getting the project done. So the Corps of Engineers was brought in to kind of complete the construction. And the last slide you can see over there, the last picture you can see over on the right, is something that I learned putting together this presentation. In 1893, Mildred and Patty Hill, who were both Louisville residents, wrote the melody to a song called Good Morning to All, which later became Happy Birthday. And why is that important? Because this year, our district is celebrating its 135th birthday. So I thought that was kind of a neat tie-in. So when you start thinking about the Corps of Engineers, a lot of people ask us where the Corps of Engineers is located. And the real question is, where is the Corps of Engineers not located? We've got folks, hang on just a second. The downside of being the only one home with the dog is she wants in and out a lot. But we've got offices really strung out all over the United States and then in other areas. You can see we've got folks in Afghanistan. We've got a district in Wiesbaden, Germany, Japan, South Korea, just really all over the country. And so when people look at how the Corps of Engineers is structured, again, as I mentioned, we are the Army Corps of Engineers. So we are part of the military, even though most of us are civilians. So I'll kind of start at the top and work my way down here when you look at this. And our top person in charge of the Corps of Engineers is the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. And that is a political appointee position. And right now, it has not yet been filled by President Biden. And so typically when there's an administration change, we get a new president. We usually get a new Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. The prior secretary was R.D. James, Mr. R.D. James. And he was who President Trump had appointed to kind of oversee the Corps of Engineers. And so we're kind of waiting to see who President Biden will pick. But once you get down a little bit further, that's where you start seeing the folks in uniform. So the top military officer within the Corps of Engineers is Lieutenant General Spellman. And so he's a 3-star general, and he's in the GAO building in Washington, D.C., and it's his job to really oversee the Corps of Engineers. The next level that we have is our Great Lakes and Ohio River Division in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so as you can see, his responsibility is kind of making sure that things are running smoothly in the Ohio River corridor and within the Great Lakes basin. And so that's Major General Whittle. And he's what we call our CG, our commanding general. But at the bottom of the slide, you can see the picture of the officer there, and that is Colonel Crispino. And Colonel Crispino is our Louisville district commander. And so there are 43 districts all across the Corps of Engineers. And the folks higher up the chain on the other boxes I talked about don't like it when I say this, but it's the truth. And all the real work happens at the Louisville district. That's where all the design happens, the construction happens, the contracts are awarded, and all of that good stuff. So typically these military officers, especially at the commander level, they're either on a 2 or 3 year assignment. In Louisville, we always have a full colonel as our commander, and so that's a 3 year assignment. Some of our sister districts, like Nashville District or Buffalo District, would have a lieutenant colonel, and those folks are only in command for 2 years. And so as we've talked about folks, they talk to this to folks, you know, people have asked me, they've been like, well, Brandon, how is it that your organization is able to stay kind of stable doing all the things that you do with these projects that can take a really long time to construct when your leaders are changing, you know, every 2 or 3 years? And so if you see the next slide, you can kind of see our senior leaders in the Louisville district. And so you can see a lot of folks that are not in uniform on that. You can see Lieutenant Colonel Manzi, she's our deputy commander. But you can also see Linda Murphy, Kirk Daly, John Bach, Tim Fudge, Vicky Vasquez, those folks. They're all civilians like me, and most of those folks have worked for the Corps of Engineers, you know, longer than I have, and I've worked for the Corps of Engineers for over 25 years now. Those folks, including Ms. Murphy, kind of provide that stabilizing influence when we've got our military leadership that's changing. And so because of that, we're able to have a stable workforce. And again, most of our employees are civilians. So I'll get back to a little bit of history here and how this kind of ties in. So when you start kind of thinking about things in the region, you know, one of the big wonders of the world that's not too far away is Mammoth Cave. And so you can see the picture there on the left of some of the features there at Mammoth Cave. And so we've worked with the folks at Mammoth Cave for a long time. We do a lot of work working with Fish and Wildlife and other environmental agencies like the Nature Conservancy and other folks to kind of work on the ecosystems in the Green River, which runs right through Mammoth Cave National Park. And so we do a lot of work with them. Right now we're actually looking, we do work for other federal agencies and kind of serve as their contracting agent or engineering agent, design construction agent, if they don't have those services. And so we're doing that right now, or starting that with Mammoth Cave. They've got some trail projects that they're interested in having us help them design and us contract out the construction for, and some roofing projects on some of their facilities that they want us to do. So we're excited about that. But the other picture there is one probably everybody is kind of familiar with, and that's a picture of Louisville during 1937 when the 37 flood hit. And so, you know, that was a pretty big life-changing event for the region. And not only that, but it was also, you know, a big shift in missions for the Corps of Engineers. So in response to that, the Louisville district was authorized by Congress to start building flood risk management projects in a lot of cities along the Ohio River. And Louisville, Jeffersonville, Clarksville, New Albany, those are all projects that we built in the aftermath of the 37 flood. And we're still helping communities with those projects. Right now, we're looking at a feasibility study to examine rehabilitation of Louisville's flood protection system, because those projects were built in the 1940s and 50s, and parts on them are wearing out. And you know, the whole aging infrastructure theme that you hear from a lot of engineers, myself included, is taking place there. So we were authorized by Congress to be able to go in and start looking at what upgrades could be made to that system in Louisville to kind of help keep its viability. So we're excited about working on that. And I'll get back to the Louisville district a little bit. You know, we've got, give or take, somewhere between 11 and 1,200 employees. That fluctuates quite a bit. We've got 43 different field offices within the Louisville district, and people are like, "What? Well, where are you? Where are your all's offices?" So I'll show that here in a little bit. But we've got a military mission that encompasses 5 different states. We've got a National Army and Air Force Reserve program. And the interesting thing that I always point out to people is we've got folks that work in a lot of different areas, not just engineering. I am an engineer by training, but a lot of folks that I've worked with at the Corps of Engineers that are essential to our missions getting done aren't engineers. We have biologists and economists and archaeologists and scientists and geologists and all kinds of other ists that help us do the work that we need to do, and we really couldn't do the missions that we do without all of them. So it's a pretty neat place to work. And so a lot of people kind of ask me, well, you know, I'd like to work at the Corps of Engineers, but I'm not an engineer. And I always tell them, you know, the non-engineers outnumber the engineers. So it's pretty neat. And so when you think about that, okay, well, Louisville's got that many people. Why do you have to have so many people? And it's because of the broad variety of missions that we have to do. So these are our numbers from last year as far as how much money that the Corps of Engineers obligated on contracts or on projects that we worked on just out of the Louisville district office. And so it's $1.5 billion that we spent last year doing our missions. And so you can kind of see, you know, our environmental mission, a lot of that is typically tied to cleaning up stuff that on former military installations and things like that. That was about $43 million. And one thing you'll learn if you haven't, working for the government or working for especially the Corps of Engineers, we love our acronyms. You can't walk down a hall without tripping over an acronym. And so you see the IIS there. That stands for International and Interagency Services, and quite simply, it's just the work that we do for other federal agencies. So last year was closing in on $200 million. Our Civil Works mission was about $275 million, and that's what, you know, a lot of folks really associate with the Corps of Engineers. It's the levees, the locks, the dams, the lakes, the things like that folks assume. I told y'all a little bit about our Army Reserve mission and Air Force Reserve mission. You can see a picture of one of the facilities that we built there. You know, that was $378 million that we spent last year. So it's a pretty significant portion of our budget. And again, those projects are strung all over the country. And we work with the local Corps of Engineers district to provide that boots on the ground construction support. But we're doing the overall program and project management there. And then you can see, again, our military mission in our 5-state area is pretty big. I mean, it was closing in on $600 million last year. So I just thought that was kind of a neat thing to show you guys the variety and amount of stuff that we've done. So, and now my slide's not advancing, so hang on a second. Maybe. There we go. Oh, went too far. So when we start looking at the Louisville district, this was a timeline that our folks had kind of put together. And when you start looking at that, you know, in 1875, the Corps of Engineers started doing lock and dam construction along the entire length of the Ohio River. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I said before, in 1886, the district was, the Louisville district was established. In 1917, we started doing work for the military, and you can see some pictures of military warehouses at Columbus, Ohio. And so we kind of took over that mission from the quartermaster. In 37, you can kind of see another picture of Louisville flooded there. And that's when we picked up our flood risk management mission along the Ohio River. And so then you can kind of move up to 1941. During the mobilization for World War II, you know, we started building hospitals, camps, airfields, ordnance plants, training facilities, all through our civil works boundaries at that time, you know, in Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, wherever the folks needed the Corps of Engineers, we were there to help them. And, you know, you kind of fast forward several years in 1988, and the Base Realignment and Closure Commission, BRAC, basically gave us a significant environmental mission to go through, and as they were trying to close those bases, you know, there was a lot of bad stuff left behind from an environmental standpoint. So we started going out to those military installations and kind of cleaning up those formerly used defense sites and things like that. And then also in 1988, there was a pretty bad drought, especially on the lower Ohio. And so during that, we started really doing a whole lot of dredging in that year to kind of keep the lower Ohio River open to navigation. And you have to have that 9-foot navigable channel for barges to come through. And so that's a mission that we still continue when you get down on the really low end of the Ohio as it gets close to the Mississippi. When I was a Department of the Army intern, I actually spent the better part of 3 weeks on one of those dredges, just overseeing dredging operations. That was before I was married, but once I got married, my wife told me I wasn't allowed to do that anymore. And I said, yes, ma'am. So in 94, we started doing our work with the Army Reserve. In 99, we picked up doing the Air Force Reserve mission. You can see some pictures of some of the projects there. And then in 2018, we were actually opening kind of the crown jewel of the inland navigation system. Olmsted became operational, and I'll talk about that here in just a little bit, because that was a pretty significant event that we had. So when you start looking at our boundaries here, and this slide's a little bit hard to see, but you can kind of see the dark brown area. That's our military mission that we have. It's a little bit over 300,000 square miles, and so it's got you know, things that places that we manage include Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Scott Air Force Base, and Rock Island Arsenal in Illinois, Fort Knox, Fort Campbell, Detroit Arsenal in Michigan, and even we've got a naval base here in Indiana, Crane Naval Surface Warfare Center. You can kind of see it right around in here. And we actually go through, and we've been helping the Navy with some of their projects there. So if you can kind of see the red, really weird shaped line kind of in there, that's our civil works boundary, and it's about 67,000 square miles. And people are like, well, who drew that up? That looks kind of gerrymandered. And the answer is Mother Nature drew that up because it's based on watershed boundaries. So everything that goes into the lower Ohio River ultimately ends up going into our district, with the exception of the Upper Wabash. And last year, the Upper Wabash portion of our district got transferred to the Chicago district to kind of oversee. So civil works missions, when you start looking at those, you can kind of see some pictures there that kind of help tell the story. But the top 4 items on this slide: navigation, flood risk management, ecosystem restoration, watershed planning, those are all missions that we budget for on a project-by-project basis. So unlike a lot of other federal agencies where they get a lot of money and can kind of pick and choose where a lot of that's spent, most of our money comes down specifically tied to projects. So and you work on those specific projects. So we kind of draft up that list of projects and send it up through division and headquarters, and ultimately it gets to the Office of Management and Budget. But if it's in those top 4 line items in bold, then we have a chance of getting funding through the President's budget. The next 2 line items, emergency management and regulatory, those are a little bit more static, with the exception being if there's an emergency, more money may get pumped into that. So that is more on a programmatic basis. And then the bottom 3, hydropower, recreation, and water supply, those are typically offshoots of one of our other missions, typically navigation or flood and storm risk management. A real good example is if you go down to our sister district, Nashville district, down where my dad's from in southeastern Kentucky, Lake Cumberland. That's a project that's got a big hydropower facility. It's got you know, obviously a whole lot of recreation on it that we typically have at all of our lakes, and then you know, a big water supply component down there. So we can't budget for a standalone water supply project or a standalone recreation project or a hydropower project. You know, typically those are going to be budgeted as part of tied into one of the other missions. The exception being, if you kind of look at the bottom of the slide there, the 2 pictures, you can kind of see a plan of the Louisville Loop, the City of Parks, where they came to us and asked us to help them master plan a loop of a bike loop that would kind of help tie all of Louisville's parks together. And we were able to do that because we had specific authority to do some master planning only. We couldn't help them build it, but we could help them plan it. And then the picture right next to it is a really neat rainbow-looking waterfall type thing, and that's at Cincinnati's riverfront, where the Riverfront Development Commission worked, and they wanted the Corps of Engineers to come in and help construct that project and design it. And so that was a standalone recreation project, but the difference was we didn't budget for it. Congress put it in as a earmark and congressionally directed us to build that project. So I talked a little bit and kind of hinted a little bit at our navigation mission, and I talked about how in 1875 they started building a series of locks and dams on the Ohio River, going up from where it started in Pittsburgh all the way down to Cairo, Illinois. And as we were going through there, at one point there were 53 locks and dams on the Ohio River, and as you can see right now, there's not 53. There's quite a few, but not 53. And so as time's gone on, those projects were kind of combined, and the navigation pools were expanded with bigger and better projects. And so we've kind of, you know, that you can see till we've got the system that you can see right now. The interesting thing about all of this, and you guys may know this, kind of being from this area, but a lot of folks don't realize it. You know, you're typically seeing those towboats with a 15 barge configuration going up the river or down the river. And people are like, okay, well, why is that important? You know, it's kind of neat to see these big barges come through there, but you know, what purpose do they serve? So if you were to take your standard 15 barge configuration and offload all of the bulk cargo on it, you would need a 216 rail cars and 6 locomotives to haul the same amount as one 15 barge tow, or 1,000 big tractor trailers. And so that really hit home to me, because I always think about if I'm driving to or from Cincinnati, you know, along 71, that route kind of parallels the Ohio River. And I've never done this, but I probably should, just so I can have it as a talking point in this slide. I've never tried to count how many trucks passed me or that I passed on the way from Louisville to Cincinnati, but I'd be willing to bet it's not 1,050. So, and that's just one 15 barge tow. So when you start looking at the environmental impact that has, carbon emissions, et cetera, or around here, as I like to look at, the pothole factor, that makes a big difference. You know, if you're keeping that many trucks and off of the roads, then you know, that's less wear and tear on our roads, which means you know, more of our tax dollars that can go elsewhere. So and when we talk about that navigation mission and some of the things that we've done, I kind of look back at the way we used to do things versus the way we do things now. You can see this this picture right here of this steamboat that we've got out there. When you get down to the area where the Olmsted Lock and Dam is built, it's really kind of interesting, because at that time, with lock and dams 52 and 53, those were wicket dams. So the river down there fluctuates a whole lot more than it does right here. So they didn't have a static dam. They would have these wickets that they would go out and raise when they needed to, and lower when they needed to control the navigation pool there. And they had a steamboat that would do this. And this is like not ancient talking about a steamboat, you know, nostalgia. This was like 3 years ago that we were doing this. And we had these guys that would have this big life jacket on and this gigantic pole with a hook on the end. And they would stand on this steamboat and they would reach down with that pole and that hook, and they would hook into that wicket, and then they would raise it up, and the boat would kind of pull them and help them do that. Now with the advent of Olmsted, it's replaced 52 and 53. When we analyzed what was going to be the best way to do this, we figured out wickets are still going to be the best thing down there. So you can kind of see now we've got a workboat that's got a wicket lifter built into it. So it's kind of the same type of process, but it's a lot safer, and we've got it more mechanized. You can also see some of the other cool things that we've done. You know, before we opened Olmsted in 2018, that was kind of a navigation marvel, and everybody was glad to see that. But in 2009, those of y'all that are familiar with the area, you can see a picture down here of McAlpin. And we replaced the 600-foot chamber that we had at McAlpin with another 1,200-foot chamber. And, you know, I was telling somebody this one day, and they said, well, what good is that? Well, one of those barge configurations is usually over 1,000 feet long. So if the 1,200-foot chamber, we had to have it down for maintenance or something was going on with it, then that meant that the towboats would have to do multiple lockages to get through a 600-foot chamber. They basically take half of their barges, tie them up to a mooring sail. Then they would take the other half, lock through, tie those barges up, lock back through the other way, empty. Then they would pick up the other half of the barges, lock back through again, and then hook them all together and then move on downriver. So now that we've got twin 1,200-foot chambers at McAlpin, we can, have much better redundancy in the system. Or we can get into a situation where if we've got, multiple tows going through, we can have one going upstream, one going downstream. So it's really offered us a lot of flexibility. And that's what the navigation industry really wants us to be able to do, is to kind of continue to have that twin 1,200s at each one of our facilities. We don't have them there yet, but we're working and hoping Congress can get us the funding to be able to do that. But some of the other missions that we've kind of picked up, again, I told you a little bit about the Army Reserve mission that we have, but over the years we've also picked up work for other federal agencies. And so you can see the bottom right photo there is a picture of the Hines Medical Center, VA Medical Center in Chicago. So we're working with them on that, and we're also working with the VA to get the project here in Louisville built. So we're kind of excited about that and excited to work on that. I personally am excited about it. My dad's a veteran. He was in the Army and served in Korea. And so he goes to the VA hospital for various things. And so, it'll be kind of nice to say that I had somewhat of a part in getting a new facility built for him to use. My father-in-law was a Navy veteran that served in Vietnam. And unfortunately, due to the use of Agent Orange, he had Parkinson's, and so he had a lot of VA appointments with that. And he actually died just right after Thanksgiving. And so, it's kind of, of course, we're sad that he died, but, he was even talking about, hey, when you all get that facility built, it's going to be pretty cool for me to be able to go use it. So just a personal note on, it really makes me feel good to be a part of an agency that, gets stuff done and that's able to help so many people. And, in our district, just this past year, we've kind of done it all. We've gone from groundbreakings to ribbon cuttings. So you can kind of see on the left-hand side of the slide there, we were supporting the National Air and Space Intelligence Center at Wright-Patt Air Force Base. We broke ground on that in November. And right below it, you can see a picture of what the final facility is going to look like. It's adding 250,000 square feet to an already 650,000 square foot complex. And it's 5 stories tall. It's a $156 million job. And it's going to provide additional workspace for up to 1,000 military and civilian employees up there in the Dayton area. So that's going to be pretty fantastic. And again, we've continued to work with the VA. And if you look at the project down at Fort Knox down there, we just opened and had the ribbon cutting on the Fort Knox community-based outpatient clinic that the VA and the soldiers there at Fort Knox can use. So pretty neat. One of the things that I've always been proud of within the Louisville district is we're always kind of a forward-thinking community and in our district, and we're always kind of looking to innovate. So you can see another picture of a towboat locking through, and this is down at Olmsted. And people might look at that and say, well, what's new at that? You said there's been towboats, with that navigation mission forever. If you look at the walls on either side of the towboat, those walls actually float up and down at Olmsted because the river river fluctuates so much down there that that the only way to adequately have these approach walls work without having to have tons of cleanup costs or having them be built way bigger than what they needed to was to make these things float. So that was kind of a new concept in the navigation mission for us to be able to do that. You can see kind of in the middle there, there's a picture of some of the other cool things that we've done, working with different personnel, helping them get trained. Some of the work that we've done there, and then on the right hand side, you can kind of see the facility there. That's one of our Army Reserve projects. And over the years, we've gotten more innovative with how we incorporate environmental features in it. So you can see a picture of some of the green roof that's attached to part of that facility that helps reduce the carbon footprint and everything else. And so as we go through and build those projects we're getting to where those projects are being more energy efficient and have less of a carbon footprint, which is a pretty cool thing to be a part of. The last few slides I've got here, the really important thing to note here is that we don't do anything without having partners. Whether that's having a meeting to talk about encroachment issues at Rough River Lake, you can see a picture there. Whether it's doing groundbreaking and working with some of our military customers that you can see, and with some contractors there where we're breaking ground on a project. Whether it's working with other federal agencies, like the National Park Service at Mammoth Cave, or whether it's working with our standard civil works partners. I was just talking to, you can see the gentleman in the blue jacket there with the MSD logo. That's my good friend JP Carson, and I don't use that term lightly because JP and I have become good friends, working over the years together. You can also see General Toy there. General Toy was our division commander prior to General Whittle. But JP there is kind of showing everybody some of the stuff that he was able to do to kind of help keep working with us to keep the Louisville flood protection system working. Several years ago, JP was kind of saying, hey, what would happen if there were some breach scenarios, on the levee flood wall system in Louisville? What kind of damages would we be looking at? So we kind of looked at a worst case scenario and did some modeling and some mapping and put a 1937 flood load on the levee flood wall system, put the river at that level, and then did some computer modeling to see, okay, if we had a breach on the upstream side on the flood wall somewhere, maybe downtown, what would the results be? And then down more towards the Rubbertown area on the levee portion, what would happen if there was some impacts there? Well, obviously it's not good. When you look at the devastation that would occur downtown, it really opened a lot of people's eyes. We started partnering with other agencies and realizing, while we hope that never happens, the city of Louisville wants to be prepared for a plan where if it does, they've kind of got some of this stuff figured out so that they can start moving towards and not have a bigger disaster than what that would be. So JP had us take that initial modeling that we did that we got from our headquarters program through our Silver Jackets program. I'll talk a little bit about that just here in a minute. And it was $75,000, which to me is a lot of money, but to the federal government, that's a pretty small outlay of funds for us to do this mapping and modeling effort. JP's then gone and worked with the state. He's worked with FEMA. He's worked with us on some other work. He's worked with U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and he's leveraged that $75,000 investment that we did to kind of show what areas might be inundated with water if we had one of those breach scenarios. And he's literally leveraged millions of dollars into developing this plan that he's working on for the city of Louisville. And there were some things in there that we just weren't aware of. If a breach like that happens, obviously you think, okay, well the hub of everything's going to be in Louisville's Emergency Operations Center. Well, that's all well and good, but they're like, well, what if the power goes out? Well, we'll run our generators. Well, where are your generators? And then they realize they're in the basement of the EOC, which would be under floodwater. So a lot of little things like that people just weren't looking at that we realized. We were talking with some folks who used to work in the chemical industry with U.S. Department of Homeland Security. When they took one look at the inundation map towards Rubbertown, they said, this is bad. And we said, oh, I know. And they're like, no, you don't understand. There's chemicals that are down there that if they come into contact with too much water, they explode. So that's really bad. So, we kind of jokingly said, well, there might be a big detention basin immediately made for all the water to go into, but we need to start making sure that the city of Louisville is coordinating with those companies to make sure that they've got a plan and are aware of this. So that helped bring them into the table. So, again, it's getting more partners to the table and doing cool stuff with our partners. And when I talk about our partners, I mentioned our Silver Jackets program. This was one of the things that was started in Ohio in 2005 and then in Indiana in 2006. And the idea was to get all these agencies together that have some sort of a stake in flood risk and get them together on a routine basis to kind of talk about what each agency does. And so Indiana really jumped on board with this concept and kind of became the model for the entire country to develop these Silver Jackets teams all over the country. So now there's one that's been formed or is being formed in every state in the union, which is pretty cool. And I've been involved with Indiana's team since 2007 when they were still trying to figure out what they were doing with this. So it's really neat to bring all these agencies together. We share resources, we share information, we try to operate as good government. So if somebody calls one of us and we realize it's a mission that our agency doesn't do, we kind of have an idea of what agency does do it and who to contact at that agency, and we can help folks. So it's really gotten a lot of attention. It was working so well in Indiana that I helped stand up the team in Kentucky around 2009 or 2010, and so not as many agencies there, but in time, as it continues to grow, we'll have more agencies there. And it's kind of a neat program. And the name Silver Jackets comes from in the aftermath of a flood disaster. You've got folks strung all over the place from the federal government wearing different colored jackets. Our folks are wearing red jackets. FEMA's out there wearing blue jackets. You've got the National Guard. They're wearing, their uniforms, camouflage. And if you mix all the colors together, you get a nasty color brown, and brown jackets didn't really sound good. So they thought, well, we're kind of the silver lining in the clouds and some hope. So they called it the Silver Jackets. I think we stole kind of the Navy Seabees logo, or appropriated it there with the yellow jacket with the rolling his silver jacket sleeves up to get to work. But it's kind of neat to be a part of all these different agencies and becoming friends and developing solid relationships with people in all these agencies. It really helps us do our mission. And when you look at some of the partnerships we have, you can see all the different logos on this slide. I could probably put together 17 other slides that show even more logos, whether we're working with like the Kentucky Mountain Bike Association to help us plan recreational trails at our lakes, or the state of Ohio, or the National Weather Service, or the National Guard, or Army Air Force Reserve, Louisville MSD, you name it. We have to work with all of these agencies, and we value all of these agencies as partners, because we can't do all of the stuff that I've been blathering on about for the last few minutes without their help. The last thing I've got here is a picture of my kids, and when I look at this, if you look at them, they're a little bit older than this now, but they're walking hand in hand down this road, and that's what I think of that we want to do with our partners. This is a good pictorial analogy of what I think we should be able to do. So when you look at this, we want to walk hand in hand with our partners down the road to success, and and work with them and work well with them, and hopefully not start slugging each other like my kids did like 5 minutes after we had this picture taken. But with that, that's really all I've got to say. We're proud to be in the Louisville area, and proud to work for the Louisville district. So our last commander, Colonel Gant, kind of coined this phrase that we were Louisville proud, and it's kind of stuck. So with that, I'm gonna
chat. I wondered what wicket meant in terms of river engineering. I didn't quite understand that part.
Yeah. So basically, when you go to everybody's used to what a dam would look like. It's one big solid piece of concrete that we would have. The wickets basically are like almost like Legos. So they're pieces of a dam that we would raise and lower as we needed to. So instead of having one big long section, we have individual sections that they kind of pop up as needed.
I have seen that work, and that impressed me as being extremely dangerous work.
Yes.
And you're out there in the raging current, and you're trying to pick up a gate off the bottom of the river and raise it to stop the flow of water. And and there are some videos of that. If you go looking for that, you'll want to be sure your kids don't get into that line of work. Also, I was surprised you say Olmsted is open.
Olmsted is open. The project itself is, and I don't know why my camera is not coming on, but anyway, the project itself is operational. but the project isn't done yet because it was also to replace lock and dams 52 and 53. We have to finish the demolition of 52 and 53 and restore the sites, and because there's cultural historic stuff we've got to look at. That all plays a role in it. So we're looking to have that project done and completely built out and everything done. Probably not this coming year, but probably in 2022. And Daisy is agreeing with me. I've got a 3-year-old German Shepherd.
Yeah, Olmsted is about 10 years overdue, I think. But it was extremely innovative, a lot of prefab. And as you said,
yes,
there were problems that you didn't have in other sections of the river.
Yeah, it really was. And it required a lot of stuff that, quite honestly, nobody had ever done before. Normally, when we do a lock and dam project, when it's been done anywhere in the world, you would build a cofferdam and kind of block out the river, and you would build the entire project in the dry. We didn't build Olmsted like that. We built the lock chambers that way, but we figured out that we could kind of do that, and we would build these giant concrete shells of the dam on the shore, and then we would kind of float them out into place. And we had this big catamaran barge that would kind of put them where we were, then fill them up and sink them and secure them to the ground. And it was really a neat way to build the project, but it required us to have a continual funding stream from Congress, because there's only so much room to build those things. It's not like you can go buy them someplace, or that you can build a bunch of them and have them stockpiled. They're huge. So it was kind of one of those, we could build one while we were replacing one, and then, we could start building another one. And so as we were kind of going through that, one of the things that we finally were able to work with Congress to get was a funding stream where it's like, look, if we tell you we need $150 million next year to build this, we're not just blowing smoke. If you give us $140 million, it's not going to be enough, and we're not going to be able to finish the project, and it's going to keep making it take longer. And Congress finally realized that, so they passed some laws to make that work a whole lot better. And once that efficient funding stream came in, we were really able to pick up work on the project and start moving it forward a lot faster than what we had been. But it's a $2.8 billion project, so that's a whole lot of money that was put in there. And the navigation industry is tickled to death to have it open. One of the jobs that I had when I was a co-op student while I was at U of L was once a week we would go down to Olmsted, or once a month we would go down to Olmsted, and we would have our survey crews down there, and they would put a surveying rod on the top of each one of the cofferdam cells where they were building the lock chambers at that time. And we would take measurements to make sure that those cofferdam cells weren't moving, because there was a lot of concern that area, the geography of that area, was a bad slide area. So, once a month we'd go down to Olmsted for 3 or 4 days, and we'd survey the tops of cofferdam cells. So it's kind of neat to go down there and see that project finish now, because I can remember when we were, just kind of getting started. So it's really neat working for the Corps, because you get to see these massive projects that honestly nobody else builds. Nobody else builds locks and dams. The only people that build locks and dams is the Corps of Engineers and the contractors that we hire to build the locks and dams. So people have talked about giving the Corps of Engineers mission, to the Department of Transportation, and I'm like, well, if you do that, you're going to have to give all of the engineers away too, because they don't know how to build locks and dams. So it's kind of neat.
You don't have dual lock capacity all up and down the river at 1,100 or 1,200 feet, do you?
No, and a lot of our projects are getting that way. I know I think it's JT Myers. We've still got a 600-foot chamber there, but if the industry had their way, and I think in their long-term plan that they work with us to submit to Congress and to submit for funding. They want twin 1200s at every facility, because it does provide the right type of redundancy, and keeps things moving efficiently for those folks.
Well, that was evident when you dropped the gate up in Markham.
Yeah, we had the gate at Markland where we had a solenoid valve that kind of, one of the filling valves that kind of failed, and the hydrostatic pressure got to be too much, and that basically caused that gate to fail. And it's kind of one of those things. Since then, we've been investing in spare sets of gates that we keep, and you can kind of see a set of those if you go down to McAlpin. And we've got a big crane that's specifically designed to lift those gates, a gate lifter crane that we've invested in, so that if something like that happens again, we've got a spare part, because it's not something you can just, and I laugh at this, but I was researching it for a presentation I was giving. And, the internet pops up all these weird little things, and this thing said, looking for lock gates, try nextag.com. And I thought, I don't think nextag.com is going to sell a lock gate for one of our lock chambers. But I got a good laugh out of it. I'm like, they're probably thinking about like a gate for your garden that you can lock, not a lock chamber.
You've talked about parks. Well, you're also the in charge of the Greenway and the flood wall here in New Albany and all of that.
Yeah, we constructed that project for the Greenway Commission, and it's a project that I'm personally excited that we got built, because me and my kids go riding our bikes on there during the summertime and when the weather's getting warm. And we were talking about maybe doing that this weekend, but I don't think we're going to get to ride on much of it with the water coming up. Hang on just a second. I'm going to let Daisy out. Come on, Daisy.
We know who's in charge there.
Yes. If not, she's going to keep barking. She's a good dog, but she does run the house. But we've the neat thing. The other neat thing about when we do a mission, when we build like a levee or flood wall project, we turn it over to the local sponsors to operate and maintain, and it's their project to operate and maintain. But we go out and do inspections on the project, and we kind of help them pinpoint issues that they have. And there's a couple reasons for that. We have an inspection of completed works program, and basically, as long as the local sponsor is constructing or operating that facility in accordance with the rules that we gave them, kind of like an owner's manual, then if it's ever damaged during a flood event, and they've been taking care of it properly, then it's eligible for us to come in and fix it at no charge to the local sponsor. So if they want to do any alignments or run a pipe through that area or anything like that, they need to come to us, and we help make sure that they're doing that in a manner that's not going to impact the integrity of that project. Whereas, if they were to just let somebody dig a garage into the side of the levee or something like that, and that caused a failure of the levee, then Congress would basically have to pass a specific law to allow any federal funds to be done to that. It would be up to the local sponsor to have to fund that, and that's a significant outlay of cash. So a lot of those folks do a real great job coordinating with us on whatever they're trying to do. In Louisville, that's Louisville MSD, and they're one of our best partners that we work with. Clarksville, New Albany Flood Protection Group, they're fantastic too. So locally, we've got good partners.
Anybody?
Hopefully, I didn't bore everybody to sleep.
Oh no, I'm sure there's much more. Thank you, Brandon, for doing this. And nobody got any questions? Don't forget to unmute yourself if you do. And thank you all for coming.
Before we go, I just want to note that I have 2 programs coming up this month, the 8th and the 15th at 5:30 on Zoom. You can sign up on the jefflibrary.org website at events. But both programs will be beginning genealogy. One will focus on using birth, marriage, and death records, and the other on census records to start genealogy. So if you know anybody interested in starting out, please let them know. And if you want to tell about next month's month's program?
And next month's program is your program. What, Tours of Indiana?
Yeah, Jeffersonville Township Public Library is going to be introducing 2 tours that are going to go online any day. Discover Indiana tours, both focus on Clark County. One will focus on the life stories of several orphans in Clark County, and the other on African Americans in Clark County. And it's the orphan stories. With the orphan stories in there, we've got lots of sex and violence, and it'll keep you awake. So, for sure.
Okay, well, Jim and Diane, where are you?
You're muted.
Last day in Florida. We leave tomorrow morning.
You're still in Florida, okay.
Yep. So
Drive
we'll be
safe.
heading home tomorrow morning.
Huh?
We're heading home tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you're heading home.
Hopefully the weather's going to be better.
Okay, drive safely.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody? Well, Brandon, thank you again.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. I
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
And
Hopefully y'all did too.
and if you don't mind, if somebody comes up with questions that we can't answer, I'll put them in touch with you.
Yeah, just have him email me or call me, and I'll be happy to. If I don't know the answer, I usually know who does know the answer, so I can help get them an answer.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, y'all take care.